Today, we will talk about HBAR and Casper in terms of some technical things and how that's impacting what they're actually allowed to tell us about all of the progress that happens behind closed doors. And one of the most common complaints or the most common comebacks about things like HBAR and Casper, especially from people who are into Solana and ETH, is that they don't have as much developer activity. And I don't really think that that's a good response, because things like HBAR and Casper are concentrating on enterprise blockchains. And when you're working with large companies and when you're working with large governments and financial institutions, you are going to have NDAs, and you're not really allowed to talk about a lot of it. And Casper has come out and said that they have a lot of things right now that are under NDA that they will announce more as they are able to. But the big thing is that these projects do have a lot of development on them, and they are very well prepared to be able to perform extremely well. What are Casper and HBAR actually trying to do? Well, Casper does have a very good team, even with the IP weed drama. They just haven't really gone through a bull run before, because the Casper token actually came out in 2021. And as far as HBAR goes, it has been around longer, but they are working to set themselves up with major people who can not only help to guide them, but who are actually partnering up in the HBAR organization itself. So for example, with Casper, the IPWE thing has had a lot of drama just because of the Chapter 11 bankruptcy, which is a reorganization. It doesn't mean that they are completely closing it down. And IPWE has come out and said that they have lined up a purchaser, which I think that IBM is in a very good position to be able to buy out IPWE and continue tokenization of IP on Casper, which the current plan for that is to put about 25 million patents on Casper, which are worth up to about $5 billion at this point. That alone would result in a Casper price of anywhere between about 50 cents and $1 if you make that direct correlation. But I have talked about that a couple of times, and I won't concentrate on the partnership. But just as a reminder, Casper is heavily involved with IBM, and IBM is probably the largest technology provider in the entire crypto space right now that is working with enterprise blockchains. And they also have a lot of things with Toshiba and Deloitte as well, which are very powerful companies. And all of these kinds of companies, they're not going to announce what they are actually working on each and every day. They are competing against each other. They are competing against many other tangentially connected companies, and they're not going to want to show what is actually happening. That's just how things actually work. And up until this point in crypto, we haven't seen a lot of that, and a lot of people complain that there's not actually anything happening because they can't point to that directly and see what is happening. And I just don't think that that's a very mature opinion. And I know that it comes from the fact that crypto development and results have come very quickly up until this point in time. But when you are concentrating on a global enterprise, things don't move quite as fast. And we have a example with HBAR too. They just got involved with the Ministry of Investment in Saudi Arabia, which is one of the richest countries on earth. And that again just shows that these projects that are working with financial institutions and governments and major companies, they are very well connected right now. They are partnering up. They are actively working on projects right now, but they are not going to be able to explain everything. So this one wouldn't directly impact utility on HBAR right now. It does show a deeper message to the quality of HBAR and what these kinds of institutions and companies actually think of HBAR. It is very well prepared to be regulatorily, I think that's a word, but it is very well set for regulatory compliance, which will make it easier for enterprise and institutional adoption. So as far as the development side of HBAR and Casper go, I am not a coder. I have very low experience with things like C++ and SQL. I've tried Python a couple of times, and my mind just really doesn't work that way. I would love to be able to sink a lot of time in that, but that's just a thing that for me is very hard, and I would have to essentially quit my job, learn this, and then be able to go out and apply that. And that's just not what I am put on this earth to actually do, in my own opinion. But if you look at the development activity of HBAR compared to that of Sol, then it's actually higher. So this whole argument about these kinds of utility tokens not having the amount of developers just is not true. It's more a response to the fact that they just can't see what is actually happening. And HBAR makes it really easy for people to learn how to develop on HBAR. So if you go to the HBAR for developers page on X, it has a ton of info out there, and that will take you to the Hedera site, where they have a load of information on how to actually develop on HBAR. It explains it all, it explains why, and it explains the core technical concepts of how HBAR actually works. So all of this information is out there, and all of this information is being put into effect by a lot of experts on an enterprise and institutional scale. So the same kind of thing applies for Casper as well. So they are working to continually improve the development environment for builders. Now, in this example, it's concentrating on DeFi, which isn't talked about a lot on Casper at this point, but it has a lot of agreements and partnerships in the financial space. And if you go there, which I will here in a little bit, then it explains how to actually do that. So the thing with Casper is that it has dApps, right? Which are decentralized applications. They can code those with Rust or assembly script, which are much more modern and which are coding languages that are used at the enterprise scale. I think Casper uses Rust as well, which makes sense because Casper is essentially, in my opinion, the POS version of Casper. And assembly script, just as an example, that is what Amazon uses for a lot of their technical and IT things. So this is aimed at being able to be easily integrated into existing enterprise applications. Then, of course, you have smart contracts on the Casper chain itself. It does not have to integrate with Ethereum at all, which is a huge thing because it's very hard to recode or to update contracts if they work on ETH. The whole thing about that on Casper is that they are easy to change and upgrade over time. It's obviously a quicker consensus protocol as well, and it is not as expensive as ETH. And then, there's not too much. Oh, yes, it does talk about gas fees here, and it just isn't as high. The only way for ETH to actually succeed is with layer 2 protocols and tokens, in my opinion, at this point. And also, in my opinion, that is not a good sign that ETH itself can and will be put into effect for these enterprise and institutional applications over a long amount of time. Things like HBAR and Casper are much easier to integrate into those because you don't have to have anything else besides HBAR and Casper. HBAR does not have smart contracts at this time, but they do have a thing which I have explained on a video in the past that didn't pick up a lot of attention, but it is a huge thing. HBAR actually has things called smart nodes, and it's comparable to a smart contract, but it is at the node. It is not a deployment or a virtual machine on the Hedera network itself. So I think that offers a lot of opportunity for HBAR. So like HBAR, Casper has a site where it explains everything. It explains what Casper is all about, how to create and code for applications on Casper. It's got tutorials, and it concentrates on how to create a contract on Casper. And in my opinion, this all goes back to my original point that there is developer activity on HBAR and Casper. It's just not as obvious because of the caliber of companies and governments and financial institutions that they are partnered up with.